Today we'll be talking about how to find an investor-savvy real estate agent. So why is that important? Because as a real estate investor, we probably get 20 no's to 1 yes, if we're lucky. What are we doing with those 19 no's? Those 20 no's? What are we doing with them? You know, there's a way to make a profit of them, and we're going to talk to Chris Craddock, and I'm going to show you an interview I did with him and how he can help you partner with the right agent to make all those no's into potential income for you. And that's an amazing thing. So give us a little background real quick, and then I'll get into the questions.
All right. Yeah. So here's my story. I got married in 2000, was on staff with an organization called Young Life. It changed my life. I loved it. I was making $20,000 a year, which is it from Young Life, which is, you know, I don't know, doable probably in some places in the country in the early 2000s, but in the DC area, it was not, if that's your only source of income. So when my wife got pregnant in 2003, I started flipping houses. And I made 12 times what I made in a year in about 4 months, and with Young Life in about 4 months by flipping houses. And so I used that money to get myself to where I, you know, just basically to continue to do ministry and be able to afford to live. Well, during that time, you know, my wife and I had a lot of kids, like a lot of kids, 6 of them. And I should have probably should have gotten a different hobby, you know, but anyway, like a TV or something. I don't know. But yeah, so the money started running out. So I started flipping houses again in 2011. At that point, almost everything was short sales. I got my real estate license so that I could get paid to flip my own short sales. And during that time in ministry, I'd always led large teams. And so I gone back to school and gotten a doctorate in leadership. And then I read Gary Keller's book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Just, it made sense. So I started building a massive real estate team. Last year, we did over 500 transactions. And, you know, we were number 20 out of the 200,000 agents in Keller Williams, built a really big organization. But a big piece of that was most of the time, the investor world and the agent world are these two separate worlds that don't get along well. And so what we did was build an organization that meshes the two of them. And it's been just a really awesome niche that has fit well for both us investors and retail agents.
There's this big conversation around whether you need to have your real estate license to be an investor. And there's this camp that says, you know, it's a license to get sued and you really don't want a license if you're an investor. And then there's this other camp that says, hey, you could save yourself a lot of commissions or get in on some commissions you never would have got in on if you had your license. My personal opinion is I've seen people do it both ways. It depends on your personality and how much of a multitasker you really are. A lot of us, though, in this business are quite AAA and aren't even happy unless we have 8 balls in the air at one time. If anyone ever takes one of our balls away, we'll go add 2 more just to show the world, you know, that we need to have it. My comment on the whole thing would be, you know, on the idea that it's a license to get sued. We ought to be given all the disclosures all the time anyways, whether you have a license or not. You know, if you bought a house and there's nuclear waste in the backyard and it happens to fall in your court, don't go dump that off on someone else, man. Handle your own crap. You know what I mean? So you bought a bad deal. You got to suck it up and eat it and go on. You know what I mean? But what's your opinion?
Well, yeah, you know, my thought is this: if you even have a mildly big business, all of your friends are going to see you as the real estate guy, right? And so in my opinion, or the real estate girl, you know, my opinion is all investors should be licensed because of the fact that people are going to come to you all the time. You might as well, you don't have to be the one showing them houses or anything else. You can refer that out and, you know, have a massive stream of income from that. The other piece is, you know, success leaves clues. And as I've looked at most, not all, there's a few that don't, but most of the massive fix and flip or wholesalers or most of the massive organizations across the country, the principal is either licensed or they have an in-house agent that is licensed and can give and receive referral fees. So I just think it's a no-brainer for me that,
well,
you know,
it's a natural fit because if you're an investor and you're out there bumping around, you're going to run into people that need some traditional real estate. They have traditional real estate needs. And then if you're out there and you're being an agent, my gosh, if you're not buying some properties or getting to the investing side at some point, you're missing the whole point of being in real estate, I think. You know what I mean? So I get it. But I think the point is you don't have to do both. I mean, I have a hard lending company. I don't even have a desk in that office. I don't have a card that has my name on about that. I have a partner in that business, and I raise the private money for my creative real estate business investing. But then when I get too much money or I can't get it out, I send it over to the hard money lending side and we get it out to my competitors who found deals before me in really short increments, 6 months, 8 months, a year loans, so that when I do need that money, it'll come back to me and I can put it back in my court and I can go out and use it. And then, that turned into a relatively decent business for me, making an extra $200,000 to $250,000 a year a piece, me and my partner in the hard money. That's not bad for a side gig, right? That you don't show up at. I hope this interview with Chris Craddock's really opening your mind. And before we get back to it, please take a look at that like button, take a look at that share button. Go ahead and mash on them for me and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Now, let's get back to Chris Craddock and how to make some money from all those no's you've been getting.
Well, I'll tell you, that was one of the things that I remember hearing Gary Keller say. I think Gary Keller is one of the smarter people in real estate. He just said, you can have like 75 different businesses, as long as each one of them is like a manila folder, what goes on inside of it, and there's a face on the front of that business, and that face is not yours, right? Like that's that whole thing. You got to have somebody else running it, and that face cannot be yours. Otherwise, you're going to be a bottleneck, right? No, I don't care how talented you are going to be the bottleneck.
Yeah, you don't want to be the bottleneck. And I have been the bottleneck of many a business.
Me too, brother. Me too.
It takes a lot to learn to get out of your own way.
Yeah.
It really takes a lot. It took me a long, long time. And I'm not even sure I've mastered it, but I've at least learned to recognize that at some point I become the weaker link in the business in some department, and it's holding up every department.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the worst when you realize that was honestly one of the biggest leveling up that I've ever had was when I brought in people that at the time they were 80% as good as I was. So they weren't as good as I was at what I was doing, but then very quickly, because they could devote all their time to that versus me, where I had my time in a bunch of different categories, like their production was a lot better. So like on a point, when I was going to meet with people to get them signed up, on the first appointment, I would outclose anybody. But the reality is, because of my time constraints and everything else, I didn't follow up nearly as well as they would. So their actual total closings were much better than I was. I'll outclose them on the first appointment, but I didn't. Yeah. Anyway, so just that same point.
That's exactly how I finally came to the conclusion, and how I got out of my business on a day-to-day transactions was I learned exactly what you said. They're not as good as me, but their attention is undivided. So they're better than me. They're better. That's a really big realization.
And now, I mean, there's a couple of the folks that are taking those appointments that close better than I ever closed. And I don't know whether it's because of the undivided nature of it. They're massively talented, but man, it's just great to let people stay in their lane and me stay in my lane. And yeah, it's awesome, brother. It's awesome.
Let's go to your investor side. It's gotten really tough. The market's crazy. The housing market, real estate in general. What are you doing to find leads? If you ask me, it's tougher than it's ever been.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to jump into like the piece that I think is just the massively amazing kind of genius of the and. So I started as an investor and I jumped into the retail side. But the biggest whirlwind is that most investors, they have people calling in, but let's say 1 in every 10 calls, is going to be a distressed seller, somebody that's going to either sell at 65 cents on the dollar or be willing to do creative financing or something of that nature. Maybe it's 1 in 4, right? Some people have like a 40% close ratio. So whatever it is, between 1 in 10 to 1 in 4, well, how many appointments? That means there's 10 appointments that you're going on where people are likely to sell, but just not at your price or with your terms and conditions. So what we did was figured out, how do you make sure that you're making money every time the phone rings? If the phone rings, you can get paid. And that was like the big key right there, is for us figuring out how to have investors partner with real estate agents. So for me, started in the investor world, but then moved to the retail world. And then I started partnering. I literally have one investor that gets sent over $60,000 a month on these leads that were normally just sitting, dying in their CRM. 60K a month. That's $750,000 a year right there. I also have like a wholesaler that literally had made no money wholesaling, for the 5 months he'd been wholesaling. And by doing this, he was actually getting paid more on these leads from the retail pass off than he was from his own wholesale deal. So that's really one of the big keys. It's less about just getting new leads, but taking those leads and making sure you're getting paid on all of the leads, if that makes sense.
I have been so blessed that you are here, and I want to give you a copy of my The Art of Creative Real Estate Investing webinar. So all you have to do is click on this link, 1000houses.com/free stuff, and skip around on that page where you see all the free things I'm giving away, and find The Art of Creative Real Estate Investing. Click on it, and it will be digitally downloaded to you right away in a snap. And you're going to see how and why I've bought thousands of houses using a certain strategy to buy and a certain strategy to sell. That strategy is called the seller financing strategy, where I sell my houses on 30-year notes and I collect income for years and years and years with no liabilities. That's what's made me a wealthy man and given me my freedom. So check it out. The Art of Creative Real Estate Investing. Bye now.